Thank you so much. And thank you, everyone. First of all, I'm excited to see we are now at 87 and more to join us. Welcome all. My name is Engineer Doreen Kirima. I'm the chairperson for the Young Engineers Forum. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, please, Engineer Doreen.
Okay, thank you so much. Yeah, my name is Engineer Doreen Kirima from Kenya. I'm the chairperson for the Young Engineers Forum and the Federation of African Engineering Organization. And quickly, kindly, someone is talking. Can he be muted, please? I'll just give a very brief overview of the Young Engineers Forum. It's a Young Engineers Forum is made up of the Young Engineers Committees for various member countries in Africa. This means the Young Engineers Committee has the chairperson or president of the Young Engineers chapters in the various countries. And the Young Engineers Committee is one of the standing committees as per the constitution of the Federation of African Engineering Organization. And the membership majorly comprises of the young professional engineers, the graduate engineers, and the engineering students. These are the students in the university pursuing engineering courses. Our main objectives is to bring the young engineers or the engineers in making together, in African continent. Of course, we have cross-cutting issues or challenges, and we try to come together so that we move forward as one, and also to advocate for engineering or advocate for engineering as a preferred course in the continent. We all know Africa is a very young continent that requires a lot of engineers so that we can develop our continent and, of course, improve the welfare of people. Not every country in Africa that is a member of FAEO, and FAEO as an organization is always calling upon all the countries to join through their engineering institutions. And of course, this is also one of the challenges we are having as the Young Engineers Forum, because some countries are left behind. Some don't even have engineering institution in their countries. And even some of the members, country members, don't have young engineers chapter or young engineers committee in their country. And therefore you can see we are still really struggling, all of us, to be on the same table. But I say we are moving forward because the membership is increasing and the activities are also increasing, which is a good indicator of improvement. I think I'll leave it for now so that we go to our topic of discussion today. Over to you, MC. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Engineer Doreen Kirima. That was wonderful. I hope that if you were lost about who and what is this organization, you have a basic idea right now. So we'll proceed to our next item on the list, and we're going to get the purpose of today's gathering. So I'm going to invite Engineer Benedict Atapoku, who is the president for Youth in Engineering of the Ghana Institution of Engineering, to give us the purpose of today's gathering. Thank you.
Hi. So good afternoon and good evening to all of you, wherever you're joining from. Just adding a little bit to what our chairperson has said, we are very excited to have all of you join this very, very important meeting. I believe that we need to be able to develop, create synergy amongst ourselves as young people. Africa has a very bright future, and I believe the future we have is because Africa has a very young population. 70% of the population of Africa are under 35 years. So the more we learn from each other, the more we draw knowledge from each other, the more we cooperate with each other, the more we create a very united front to be able to move forward as young people, but not just young people, but young people in the practice of engineering. So I believe that this is just the beginning of many encounters and interactions that we're going to be having in the coming future. And so please let's all have fun. Let's learn from each other. Make sure that you know someone after this meeting. Pick a number, pick a contact from the list of people in the meeting, and try to connect with somebody across your border. So I hope you're going to have a very interesting program by the end of the day. Thank you so much for joining from wherever you're joining from. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much, Engineer Benedict. That was really wonderful. I can see, before we move to the next item, I can see that there are some people who had introduced themselves in the texts. So we could I see that there's Engineer Lillian from Nairobi, Kenya. Hi. Engineer Anthony Indolo, Kenya. I hope I'm not butchering your names. I'm so sorry. There's Perry Blay from Ghana, and it's great. There's Kiri Geya Julius. He's also a civil engineer. Hi. Thank you so much. Let's continue to introduce ourselves and interact. So we'll move on to so today we have special greetings from the president of the FAEO in the person of Engineer Kazawadi Papias Dedeki. I hope I have not butchered your name, sir. Or madam. So we will proceed to have our special greetings from the president of the FAEO. Thank you.
You, the moderator. Good afternoon, good evening.
Good afternoon.
Hello, can you hear me?
Can hear you, Engineer Kazawadi.
Good afternoon, good evening, and I hope we don't have good morning. But if it is there, it's very good also to have you in this. I'm very glad that the participation of this meeting is over 100 now, and it is very exciting. And congratulations to the chair of this young committee. Chair, I don't have much to say other than encouraging you, and your chair has already introduced the federation. For me, it's just to bless this meeting and to request you to continue with vigor and motivation so that the future of the federation lies in your hands. And what you want it to be tomorrow will depend on what you are doing now. So generally, I encourage you to be active from your respective countries where you are. Make your voice heard through the institutions of engineering. Otherwise, the federation is very dependent and relying on your efforts and what you are doing now. I don't have much to say other than saying congratulations for this gathering, and the deliberations that are going to be made in this meeting are going to give more courage and motivation for what you want to do tomorrow and after tomorrow. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Engineer Kazawadi. So we got special greetings from the president of the FAEO in the person of Engineer Kazawadi Dedeki. So we will proceed with today's program. As you all know, we're going to have a conversation today on climate change adaptation. And just to give us a brief idea, it is just the process of adjusting to the effects of climate change. So today's discussion is going to be a bit different because we usually have conversations on just climate change, but now we're going to talk about how, we can adapt, changes that can be made, and then also mitigation measures. So I'm going to proceed. So sorry for the interruption. I'm going to proceed with the introduction of the moderator of today's panel discussion. Our moderator for today is a senior lecturer, the postgraduate coordinator of the Department of Chemical Engineering of the Faculty of Chemical and Mechanical Engineering of the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. He also has a certificate in data science and machine learning from MIT, the Schwarzman College of Computing Institute. Kindly hold on for me briefly. So sorry for the interruption. All right, so sorry for the interruption. So our profile, the profile of the moderator. So he's a senior lecturer, a postgraduate coordinator of the Department of Chemical Engineering of the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. Our moderator for today has a Bachelor of Laws from KNUST, August 2023. He has a PhD in Chemical and Biological Engineering from the Hambat National University, Republic of Korea. He has a an MSc in Chemical Engineering from KNUST. He has an MSc Research Exchange from the Western University, London, Canada. He has a BSc Chemistry from the University of Cape Coast, Ghana. He also has a certificate in data science and machine learning from MIT. And he also has done his research interest. He's worked on the valorization of waste or biomass into useful products, that is material synthesis for environmental remediation and energy applications, as well as for enhanced petroleum oil recovery. He's done research on carbon capture and its utilization and storage. He has done research on development and application of sustainable oil well cement, the bioremediation of spilled petroleum products, chemical treatment of materials, that's pyrolysis and co-gasification of biomass and other resources into fuels and chemicals. Our moderator for today is the person of Dr. Patrick Boache, and he is going to take us through today's program, and he will introduce the rest of the panelists to us. I want us to unmute our mics and give him a round of applause. He's a wonderful, I mean, by his profile we know that he's more than capable of leading today's program. So let's give him a round of applause as he comes and leads today's meeting, the panel discussion. Engineer Patrick Boache, please, if you're in the meeting, kindly take over. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Engineer Deborah Sechi, for your kind words. I'm not going to waste much time. I think that our time is fast running. So let's begin our panel discussion. Our panel discussion primarily, in addition to any other thing that we'll try to talk about today, would focus on climate change adaptation. Within my circles over here, people are talking about mitigation, whether we should look at mitigating or adapting and so on and so forth. I think that today's discussion will bring to bear a lot of the information we need so that we can make the necessary impact we have to make in our circles. So I'd like to introduce the three key people who are going to help us in our discussions today. The first person I would like to introduce is Engineer Abigail Echampoma Opoku. Engineer Abigail Echampoma Opoku, who hereinafter I'll be referring to as Engineer Echampoma Opoku, is a driven and accomplished electrical and electronics engineer with Ghana Great Company, one of the leading power transmission companies in Ghana. She holds a bachelor's degree in electrical and electronics engineering from the University of Mines and Technology and a master's degree in engineering management from the same institution. Engineer Echampoma Opoku has several years of experience working in the power transmission industry, where she has excelled in the design and implementation of electrical systems and equipment. She has a strong background. She has a strong background in power system analysis, and she has worked on several, high-profile projects that have contributed to the improvement of power supply in Ghana. In addition to her technical expertise, Engineer Champoma Opoku is also passionate about mentorship and youth development. She strongly believes in the power of education and regularly volunteers her time to mentor and coach young people in her community. She is particularly interested in encouraging more young women to pursue careers in science, technology, engineering, and mathematical fields. Engineer Abigail is an ALS software engineering graduate. She's excited about the potential for technology to transform the energy sector and is committed to staying up to date with the latest trends and innovations. Overall, Engineer Abigail is a highly motivated and dedicated professional who is committed to excellence in everything she does. She is a true asset to the Ghana Great Company and an inspiration to young people in her community. We would hold on with the applause, and then I would go to the next person I would like to introduce for today's discussion. The next person is Dr. Uchongu Elisha Ake. Dr. Uchongu Elisha Ake is a GA Consultant Limited managing partner. That started from January 2003 till present, which is about 21 years and 6 months and counting more. He's a transportation engineer who focuses on highway design and traffic engineering. His educational background is as follows. He has a Doctor of Philosophy degree in climate change and adaptation from the University of Nairobi. He also has a Master of Science in Climate Change degree from the University of Nairobi, and then a PhD, yes, the PhD I've mentioned. He also have a BSc in Civil Engineering from the Jomo Kenyatta University of Agriculture and Technology. Recently, he has also bagged an MSc in Transportation and Planning and Engineering from Edinburgh Napier University in Scotland. So that is about Engineer Ake Elisa. Then the last but not the least person, Engineer Idoreyin Idosin. Engineer Idoreyin Idosin is a petroleum engineer with a master's degree in environmental resources management and has a strong background in environmental safety and health consultancy. He has over 12 years of experience and proven expertise in safety, health, environment, and quality assurance and management systems. He's an innovative professional with a strong ability to identify, to analyze, and solve problems to increase client performance through expertise in program development and management, creating training strategies and consulting. He has national and international certification in circular economy, green technology, energy efficiency, and several other occupational health, safety, and environmental aspects. Engineer Idoreyin is a member of various professional bodies. He has served on several committees in the Nigerian Institution of Environmental Engineers, as well as the Mayatama branch of the Nigerian Society of Engineers, where he is an active member. Engineer Idoreyin is presently the chairman of the Nigerian Institution of Environmental Engineers, Abuja chapter, and has represented the institution in several national and multinational events. He is also a member of the editorial board committee of the Nigerian Society of Engineers. He is a principal consultant at True Spec Safety Consult and general manager, Eurotech Solutions Limited, a renewable energy and environmental service company. Engineer Idoreyin is passionate about human development and environmental sustainability. He is happily married with children. Ladies and gentlemen, I borrow from the MC, and I would indulge you to unmute your mics. With a mighty hand of applause, let's welcome our panelists for today's discussion. Yeah, I heard a few people clap though, but that is fine. I know that the others are clapping in spirit with us. So let us begin. I mean, already. I would like to call on each one of you. You take turns, probably from Engineer Abigail first, and then the rest would follow. For you to give us a brief introduction of yourselves and describe your work which relates to climate change adaptation in your respective countries. So, we'd like to do that briefly. Hello, Engineer Abigail. Otherwise, we can pick Dr. Elisha Ake.
Hey, hello, sorry, I was talking on mute, sorry. Sorry, I was talking on mute. My name is Engineer Abigail Champma Opoku, as rightly mentioned by our honorable moderator, and I'm an electrical engineer with Ghana Grid Company, the sole transmission company in Ghana. Primarily, my work revolves around ensuring the resilience and reliability of our power transmission infrastructure. And even in the face of climate change, we ensure that the NITS, that's the National Interconnected Transmission System of Ghana, is resilient. So about how climate change adaptation relates to my work, I believe we are adapting our system to withstand extreme weather events. So I'll list it like infrastructure reinforcement, strengthening of transmission lines, using more robust material like turn and took. And even though they have their electrical capabilities, they also have their mechanical capabilities that ensure that the system is robust and ensure seamless transmission of power, even in high winds or heavy rain and extreme temperature that can result in probably sagging of the infrastructure, the should I say transmission lines, yeah. And also we are upgrading most of our substation to resist flood. So something that a civil engineer will call embankment and all the drains in the substation. So if there is flood or if the area is flood prone or now flood prone due to climate change, then the drains will be able to, reduce it, and the embankment will be able to support the terrain. Yeah. And also we are creating we are ensuring there is a new introduction of our land management. That's a policy that helps to ensure that our transmission line of we call it right of way, yes, pathway is, should I say, more of redundant to ensure that electricity can be rerouted in case of any damage to any part of the network. So that is how robust our network is. And I would also say we also invest in renewable energy integration, and that is for the future. And we are implementing advanced technologies, and this is restricted due to foreign aids. Like we do not have enough funds to embark on it, but in the near future, we are going to implement advanced technologies like smart grid, energy storage system. For us, we would need more battery energy storage systems, and for the generators like Volta River Authority, which is one of the power generators in Ghana, they will need something like a pump storage system. And all these are underway, like aside the ones that I mentioned that we're already doing, the advanced technologies is underway. We would implement it at the right time when there is enough funds to implement it. And investing in renewable energy, we know that renewable energy is cost effective. Like it takes a lot of money to invest in renewable energy, and we'll get there gradually. The transmission network or transmission system will get there too. So yeah, that's about it about my work and how we adapt to climate change. There is a lot I can list, but I'll allow my fellow panelists to also speak about their work and how it adapt to climate change. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. That was quite elaborate. We are excited that you are doing a lot for Mother Ghana and for that matter Africa. So I would like to call on Engineer Edorain if he's around. Actually, I must say probably that eluded me that he also has an MSc in environmental management. Shall we have Engineer Doreen Idison?
Okay, thank you, the moderator, and thank you for finally getting my name right. So I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad to with the opportunity to also relate with other professionals from Mother Africa, around Africa. So as you said, I'm actually a petroleum engineer, but I went from petroleum to environment when I saw the devastation. I was actually, would I say, fortunate when I did my youth service. I did my youth service, and where I was posted to was the Renewable Energy Division of the National Petroleum Company in Nigeria, which is the NNPC. And from there, I actually got the flair because I knew beforehand from petroleum, and then having seen what petroleum can do, I got the feel that I need to go past the petroleum, but go into how to save life and how to save the environment from the devastating effects of petroleum. So I went into environment, and actually that's where I've been. We've done as my organization, because I'm in a renewable energy organization and we do a lot about renewable energy. We are into wind turbine. We actually are kind of one of the first set of organizations that are trying to encourage wind turbine in Nigeria. The wind is actually an issue, except when you come up north. That's when you are able to make good use of the wind turbine to generate electricity. But most times you have the solar panels almost everywhere in Nigeria. And with the increased tariff in electricity, most people are going off grid to generate the electricity. So that's one. But for my institution, that's the Nigerian Institution of Environmental Engineers, we do a lot of advocacy. We understand for adaptation in climate, a lot of, so you have it already there, but how do people, how do you build resilience? We work with a lot of government agencies. So we have government agencies that forecast for floods, forecast for rainfalls, and a lot of others forecast. So we try to trickle down to those that will feel it will really affect. We do a lot of community engagement. We do some radio programs to really tell those that we know this flood will actually affect. And we'll see how we can help them also build resilience to the climate effects of everything around us. So that basically, I know we'll talk more about it, but let me not just leave it now, since I know we'll have a lot to really talk about in the course of discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That is quite brief and concise. Well packed as well. So I would like to call on Dr. Elisha Ake to also tell us briefly about how his field is connected to climate change.
Thank you, moderator. All protocols observed, and I appreciate our FAEO president for gracing the occasion and the FAEO Young Engineers Committee. Thank you for having us. As you have heard, my name is Engineer Dr. Elisha Ketch. I am a civil engineer consulting in the highway engineering space, and I'm also a senior lecturer at one of our local universities called Multimedia University in Kenya. So about climate change, I can say all of us, we know how the story has been evolving from the Kyoto Protocol, and it operates on the precautionary principles. That means there is the risk of it all. When I began the work in the climate change space, people used to say there is mounting evidence. Then today, we say the evidence is overwhelming. In our own nation, Kenya, here recently, we had floods everywhere, and there are great damages that have been witnessed. So when we are talking about climate change adaptation, it's really how to move from these shocks so that we are able to live our normal life. Earlier, I was telling some people that probably we need to pitch this debate a little bit in a different way, in a manner that we need to bring everybody on board to understand what is climate change, after which we move to the mitigation response. And the reason why I am here, I am so passionate about sensitizing every engineer to participate in the decarbonation. And that is why I teach the undergraduate, the graduate students, and even the communities. I came up with an outfit where I'm the chairman. We call it Climate Change and Sustainability Basics. So we work with communities, we work with young people, we work with engineers. I have served in the Council of Engineers, Institution of Engineers of Kenya. And that's why I managed to visit Ghana in 2023. I was able to be hosted in a conference in the western part, that is Konde Tokoradi. And I got space, and I was talking about the story of resilience to all of you in Ghana. And if you recall, I said Africa must rise. And we have an opportunity tonight, now it is evening this side, to actually take a pinch of this and sensitize ourselves. And I call on all young engineers to develop interest so that our communities are shielded from the shocks that come with climate change. Thank you, moderator. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Eke. So we move on to the next thing we'd like to know, and we want Engineer Idorain to give us a little touch on how he could briefly explain what is climate change and what are its primary causes. Reason being that most people have heard about it. I mean, many intellectual, circles, and many people hear about climate change and they don't even really know what it is about. So what is it and what are the causes, please? Briefly.
Okay, so since we won't go into intellectual jargons, in a nutshell, a simplified way, climate change is a long-term shift in temperature and weather patterns. Long-term shift. So we're not looking at a shift of say 2 months, 3 months. When you have a shift of temperature over a location for say 10 years, I think it's a decade, or sometimes they use 2 decades, then you can actually term that as climate change. So it's a change. So if like now we understand the temperature of the world has actually increased by I think 1.4%, and then we want to reduce it because things have changed over time. And then to go to the causes, which most of us know already, there are actually 2 major causes of climate change. We have the natural cause of climate change, which looks at the sun, the distance, and then people talk about volcanic eruption. But you find out over the past, I don't know the last time we had volcanic eruption. The last one I had was some years back when it happened in Ireland, somewhere around Europe, when there was destruction in flight. But I've not heard about that. So the major causes of climate change in the past 20, 30, 40, 100 years have been human factors, which actually can be linked to the industrialization. The world is getting industrialized right from the different, we're in the fifth industrialization. So right from after the Stone Age, when we got to the use of coal and all that, the world had actually burnt a lot of fossil fuel. And because of industrialization, because the world is trying to make things easier for people, we've used a lot of fossil fuel, from pure crude oil to the ones we use. You have coal being used and to fire the thermal engines and all that. So there's been a release of a lot of what we call greenhouse gases. So greenhouse gases are actually gases that go to the atmosphere and then they trap the heat. So when they trap the heat, it actually makes the earth warmer, and it also helps to increase the climate change. The world is a global village, as we come to understand. So things that are done, I say for Africa, we are kind of unfortunate because we bear the brunt of climate change, but we are not really those that actually contribute. We don't really contribute as much as the Western world, but we are actually bearing the brunt of climate change, as we've come to know later. So the causes are mainly human causes. The release of carbon dioxide, the release of methane, the release of nitrogen have actually led to the world becoming warmer and have led to the change of climate over there in Europe and in Africa and also in Asia. So that's actually just a brief. As I said, I want to just try and make this short. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I hope that personally for me, when I shared on my status, most of my students, especially my postgraduate students in chemical engineering are joining, and I know that other people in my circles are joining, and people are learning one or two things, from here. So I'm excited, about today's program. Thank you for that sharp response you've given us. Now I would move on to Engineer Abigail Echampomapoku, and I would need her to, give us a few evidences as she can recount that highlights the reality of climate change. Is it really happening? Because a lot of people make a fuss about it. They say that it's not really happening. I mean, since Noah's time, the biblical story most people know, we had serious downpours and the earth got flooded. And so if places are getting flooded nowadays, it's not a news, and so on and so forth. So the whole climate change agenda has been pushed by some of we intellectuals who align with a certain school of thought. Would you please tell us whether there are any experiences you can highlight?
Okay, thank you very much. I would say recent evidence of climate change includes increasing frequency and intensity of extreme weather conditions, especially in Ghana. I don't know whether those in Ghana have observed like there is severe and unpredictable rainfall pattern now. I remember, was it yesterday? It looked like it would rain, but it never rained. Like the clouds had gathered, it looked like it would rain, but it never rained. And this frequent flooding, if it rains for over a day, more than 5 hours, and it causes flooding. And if you are in Ghana, you know that there are areas where it wasn't a flood prone zone, like it wasn't prone to flood at all. But now those areas are flooding. People might say it's due to poor waste management, but I would say it's due to climate change, mostly. And in other areas too, there are heavy drought, like heavy drought. Like the temperature is very high and the soil is very dry. Like our northern part of Ghana, Burkina Faso, going heavy drought. And if you look at data from Meteorological Agency, Ghana Meteorological Agency, it shows a significant rise in the average temperature over the past few decades, but it's more severe, especially within this year, 2024. And it contributes, it contributes to the precipitation pattern and increased evaporation rates. That's why you see most of our river banks drying, and our sea falling, the tides falling as well. So yeah, this event underscore the urgent need for effective adaptation measures. Else, we might not have any food to eat. We might not have anywhere to stay because we will be forced to evacuate due to the high temperature, and so forth. Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much. I love my panelists because they are so succinct and straight to the point. I was going to say each one of you would give me examples from your various countries, but I think Engineer Abigail has given us one from Ghana. The fact that there was seeding for rain to fall, but it didn't happen. But I mean, somebody would say that, yeah, sometimes it will be cloudy and the rains would push to. Where I lived in Sekendita Kradi, you see the clouds forming above the seas and then they move away and it doesn't rain. But then she goes on to give us more insight into that. That's interesting. I'll call on the other two panelists to give us examples, they can find in their countries. I know that the situation wouldn't be so much different, for example, say from Nigeria and other sub-Saharan African places, but please give us a few if you have any. So Dr. Ake and Engineer Idorain, please, we are listening to you.
Okay, so for Nigeria, I'm very sure, okay, Ghana is close to Nigeria. I don't know if Kenya, if they're actually aware. One of the things that we are really battling in Nigeria has been the farmers-headed clashes. So, and that has been a reoccurring event. Government come, government go. They've not been able to find a real solution to it, although there's been the plan of trying to get people to ranch their cattle so they won't have to move their cattle from up north to down south. Because in Nigeria, the major cattle rearers are those in the northern part of Nigeria, and then you have more farmers in the middle belt part and then down south. But of recent, because of climate change, you have a lot of droughts taking place. You have a lot of desertification. The country is almost being turned into a desert. The arid part of the country, the northern part of the country, is really being turned into a desert. And then you have Lake Chad. I'm very sure you know about Lake Chad. The fact that over the years, it has lost over 80% of its water. And that's where most of the cattle rearers used to go, maybe during the dry season, to be able to feed their cattle. But now what's happening is that they are coming down south, and then they come down south, they are now battling with farmers for land. So you have farmers planting their crops, and then the cattle rearers coming down, and then the cattle destroying crops. And that actually has resulted in a lot of things. And then we talk about food security, and a lot of life have been lost. So a lot of those things actually are really, really attributed to climate change. And then the country is actually doing a lot. I might come to that later. You have a lot of agencies springing up, trying to build trees and trying to restore. I know this year, the World Environment, they talked about restoration. And I know a lot of agencies are doing, but they have a big task at hand. And if it's not taken care of, I don't know how far the country will be able to hold, the resilience of the country will be able to hold before climate change actually consumes the nation. So that's actually one, in addition to the flooding, because flooding in Nigeria is massive. In 2012, I think the country lost about 16.9 million because of flooding. 2022, almost the same thing happened, and a lot of lives were lost. Lots of land, farmland were actually lost. We had flooding taking place in over, I think 32 out of the 36 states of the Federation. So climate change has actually contributed. It has devastating effect on Nigeria as a country. So it's good we're talking about adaptation to see how people can build the resilience to be able to live even in the face of climate change. Thank you, moderator.
Yeah, thank you very much. So we go to Dr. Ake.
Thank you, moderator. When I listen to my colleagues share their experiences in their countries, I say Africa, we are the same, so we should be united. Kenya is a nation which is 20% arable and 80% arid and semi-arid. We've had challenges coming up due to climate change issues, drought and flooding, changing in their frequency and occurrences, the impacts and intensity varying, so that it is strange that whereas we read in literature that there will be sea level rise elsewhere, here in Kenya we have our lakes actually rising, so that communities that were used to building their homes, giving just a small buffer to the shoreline, have been submerged, and now they have to shift. And there's great research going on. People are wondering why, for example, Lake Victoria is increasing in its water level, and some other lakes like Baringo, Lake Nakuru. All of these are happening because of the climate change and human action. Obviously, we know when there's heavy precipitation, then we don't have the soil cover in terms of the forests and green vegetation, then there will be increased runoff. That's just the science bit of it, but the fact is we have the evidence of the impact of climate change. Recently, 2 months ago, as I mentioned earlier in my statement, we've had heavy rainfall happening all over our nation, and there have been great losses in millions and millions of dollars. Even we are still scratching our heads how to fix the damages. So obviously this is replicated across Africa, and that's why the story of adaptation fits in very well, and more specifically to engineers who design the infrastructure. And then what this means is that we need to learn the disaster risks management, so that adaptation is a recovery process. So then the next shock does not cause the same damage that it caused when it first happened. So I can say that we have similar experiences. Sometimes it is drought, sometimes it is flooding, sometimes it is high temperatures, and our people are suffering. And as engineers, you know, our main duty of call is to lift the welfare of our people. And so I finish by saying, this evening or this afternoon, we will call on young engineers to dig deeper into the issues of climate change and see how they can embed it in their work, especially to call everyone to decarbonate in terms of reducing the emission levels at per capita level. And that will help us a great deal. Thank you, moderator.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ake. Yeah, so that leads us to our next question. Really, from the responses you have given thus far means that this discussion about climate change and global warming and so on and so forth is not a hoax, as people have portrayed it to be, because the die effect and consequences are everywhere and everybody can feel it. I mean, trends are changing and so on and so forth. So I'll call on Engineer Abigail to tell us how has climate change affected agriculture in Ghana, for example. Limit yourself to agriculture and food security. I think that Engineer Durain talked about that. I was happy when he opened it up to the Fulani activities, the herdsmen, if you like, bringing their cattle and livestock to come and graze down south, and the fact that it's affecting people here and there. Can you tell us what is happening so long as agriculture is concerned and food security in Ghana? Then Dr. Ake will come again and tell us same from where he's coming from.
Thank you very much, Honorable Moderator. Yeah, I think Ghana is in the same soup as Nigeria when it comes to these Fulani people. But nonetheless, climate change has impacted, like you mentioned, our food security and agriculture. And I believe our brother Felix, who is an agriculturist, would maybe have a submission on that after this panel discussion. So irregular rainfall pattern and this extreme weather have disrupted planting and harvesting cycle. And I don't know whether my colleagues from Kumasi and then the other part of Ghana have realized that the prices of foodstuffs has skyrocketed. And the cost of living is rising because the price of foodstuffs has skyrocketed. And this drought also is also leading to the price of foodstuffs also increasing. Crop is not yielding like it's supposed to yield because the soil is too hard or too soft. And this is a threat to food security. And if we do not take care, we might be importing everything we eat in some few decades to come. And additionally, increased temperatures and this changing pattern has also stressed agricultural productivity. So now many people are resorting to this greenhouse planting, organic way. And this is also a very expensive way of growing plants, and it makes foodstuffs, those organic foodstuffs, also extremely expensive. So only the rich in Ghana can afford. A regular Ghanaian or a normal Ghanaian who takes an average salary cannot live on those organic foods. You would have to go for the normal ones, which are also equally expensive, just that it's not as expensive as the organic foods. Yeah, many farmers are struggling. It's a fact. They are really struggling to maintain livelihood. Sometimes the road network is bad, so transporting these food to cities is also a problem, and they might be rotten even on the farm before it gets to the market. And people would end up probably eating these spoiled food and they'll fall sick, typhoid, malaria, cholera, all sort of food diseases. So yes, we have to rise and then adapt. And I praise Ghana for bringing initiative like the Resilient Ghana. It was launched at COP28, which I was privileged to attend. So Ghana has partnered with other countries and it aims to address these challenges by promoting sustainable agricultural practices. And the name of the project is Resilient Ghana. Yeah, so yeah, in conclusion, food security is a measure of individuals' ability to access food, and if we are not able to access nutritious food, then we are doomed. So yes, it's affecting our food security. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I would pick it up from Dr. Ake, and then we'll move on to our next question.
Thank you very much. Just to confirm that I share the food security situation in our country. Moderator?
Yes, please. Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. I think, as I said before, Africa, we are the same. The food security situation in Kenya, I can say over the last few years, people have been singing about it because of the cost of food security. Earlier, I told you that Kenya is a land where 20% is arable and 80% is arid and semi-arid. That gives you the picture of the constraint we have to feed the nearly 60 million people. And this brings the pressure, especially when the rainfalls fail. And, primarily Africa, we are rain-fed agriculture. And so farmers bear the brunt of big losses. What is happening, and this is a discussion that the young people should have, we are doing major imports, which is very costly because the dollar exchange is very costly. And personally, I have been thinking these adaptation measures should be scaled down to the villages and to the homesteads so that everyone should produce enough for him or herself. There is a concept called biocapacity, and it is linked to the circular economy. That means because the resources are scarce, we should use those scarce resources in agriculture to produce more. Like, how can we get alternative proteins? How can we get alternative cereals? And this Kenya is doing very well because our nation today, our government is focusing on food security, and we call it smart agriculture. We have a devolved system, just for knowledge, that we are a country being governed at two levels. We have the national government and then the county governments, which are 47 in number. So each of these governance units have embedded the issues of climate change so that there's financing up to the village level. And the primary target is agriculture, so that we don't import, but we self-produce. So I think we still have great strides to make, but we are on course. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ake. I must tell you, everybody who is a guest today and listening to all this important discussion, that people are sending their thoughts, in the chat box, which I'm so much happy about. Some people say that they are equally facing it in the southern part of Africa, and some are saying the situation is same in Uganda, and some are even suggesting that if the rainfall patterns, Dr. Ake did mention the fact that we heavily depend on rainfall. If the patterns are not, too regular as we expected it in the past, then we should focus on looking at groundwater for irrigation and other methods, rainwater harvest and so on and so forth. Interesting. That is going to lead me to my next question, which I would like Dr. Ake, Elisa, to take it up. So this is the issue. Africa, generally has about 1,162 million hectares of agricultural land. That is the kind of projection since 2021. And this should be equivalent to about, 40% of the continent, total land area. So people are saying that, however, we we, most of our jobs are into agriculture and others. But the other people in Europe and America and other continents are using heavily doped chemical fertilizers, and their countries are heavily industrialized, hence causing them to contribute much to the climate change. It is even said that Africa contributes not more than 3% of these things we are talking about. So Engineer Dr. Elisha, do you believe that Africans contribute significantly to global climate change? And if so, how? And if not, why not?
Thank you. This is one of the questions that normally bring hot debates at the COPs, because it is a belief that Africa or the poor nations in the global south produce very little of the greenhouse gas emissions. Like the case of Africa, which you have cited, we are primarily a subsistence economy. And so we produce most of our mainstays from agriculture at the livelihood level. But those other nations in the north, they rely heavily on production, manufacture. And so from a casual look, you will agree that they produce more of those emissions. I tend to disagree, because I want to ask ourselves here, how are cities on the surface transportation? Don't we cry about the congestion on our roads? And we say that transportation alone contributes to up to 25% of the global emission. So if all our cities put together in quantum, it will be so much. And so it is not an escape route that we can say we are producing in significant amount that we don't need to move to climate action. In any case, most of the investments that we depend on are sensitive to the weather elements. For example, if we are a subsistence economy, then we rely on rain-fed agriculture. When the agriculture fails, then we all die. That means we should be the first on the list to move to climate action. So moderator, for me, all of us, humanity, must move, because this is a danger. And the warning, wherever place it happens, and allow me to use the case of COVID 2019. It started somewhere in China, but it affected the whole world. If we can use the same reasoning to see how this issue of climate change risk is actually spreading, maybe only few nations are contributing immensely, but the impact is affecting all of us. And so if we who are still on the growth trajectory, we can do it better, then we don't need to do it the worst way like our predecessors, so that we meet somewhere to agree on how to correct. So our time is now, and we must do it right. And that's why our engineers must be given the right knowledge in their designs, so that they produce innovative and sustainable investments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very, very much, Engineer. That was quite elaborate. We can't sit idle and say that we are not contributing much, therefore we will not do anything. We should begin as engineers to incorporate and look at these things into our designs. We should look at adaptive and smart systems that will not make us contribute much. If indeed we are not contributing much, and that is a credit to us, it means Africans, we are saving the world as we are supposed to make it our homes. Thank you very much. I am going to move to Engineer Abigail. and ask, how has climate change specifically impacted Africa? I think that we can pick a lot of the answers from explanations all of you have given intent. So maybe if you can mention briefly how climate change has affected Africa, then we can move on. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So yes, indeed, climate change has affected Africa, and I would group the effect and the environmental, economic, social impact. And I'll cite some few examples. So, and the environmental, like our panelists widely mentioned, the effect is all across Africa. It's in Nigeria, it's in Sudan, it's in Kenya, it's in Uganda, it's in Nairobi, everywhere in Africa. So whatever I'm saying is in relation to everywhere in Africa. So now temperature increase. We're experiencing high temperatures, like our panelists rightly confirmed that even in their countries, they're also experiencing high temperatures. Some regions are warmer. In Ghana, the southern region was not really warm, but now, even at this point, we are supposed to be in a rainy season, but the southern region is very, very warm. And this is also an impact on the environment, an increased heat wave. Yes, and also altered rainfall pattern, like we rightly mentioned. That's the under the environmental impact. So we have the temperature increasing, and then the rainfall being altered, and the sea level rise. So if you look at the coastal regions in Ghana, if you look at Cape Coast, around Cape Coast, Accra, Gomwa, those regions, it looks like they are facing rising sea level, leading to erosion. And even though the government have built some, I don't know the technical name, but something to support the rise, the sea rise, is of no use now, because the sea level is depreciating. Yeah, and desertification, like if you go to some other parts where there used to be a number of, should I say, trees, so afforestation was very rampant in those areas. The trees were booming and all that. Now, if you go there, you see dryland, and it's as a result of all these environmental impact and loss of biodiversity. Climate change threatens ecosystems. We all agree to that, and these species are unable to adapt to like they're unable to adapt to these changes, and they might face extinction, especially water species and some plant species who rely solely on water, like plants that are supposed to be in swampy areas. They might face extinction. So now let's move to the economic impact agriculture. Like the moderator and two panelists rightly agree that agriculture is the backbone of Africa. It has always been. Africa has all its minerals, rich in minerals, and also agriculture. And agriculture has been the backbone. For some years, we were producing and eating food ourselves, like consuming the food ourselves. But now we are relying more on goods from the Western world, like importing goods from the Western world. It's because our agriculture has depleted. And yet, being the backbone of many African economies, is affecting the economies of Africa, and that's one economic impact. And reduced crop yield and livestock productivity also affect our economy, because they result in a certain certain addition to the economy. So if the crop yield has reduced, livestock productivity is not as supposed to be, then it will affect our economy. And like food security, we rightly mentioned food security. And our water resource, I think Lillian Kilatia, if I mentioned the name right, mentioned in the chat that we could use groundwater recharging method to intercept surface runoff and replenish ground table. I really wish Lillian would submit this, and then let us know more about that. But I think that's one of the solutions Lillian mentioned. But these water resources, if they are altered and if they are scarce in some few years to come, they are going to affect our economy. I don't know whether we are going to import water, like finally, in some few years to come. And that's a question for the gods. So social impact, our health. In Africa, we are prone to cholera and malaria and typhoid. If there are a lot of floods in the area, you see a lot of typhoid diseases being recorded in clinics and hospital. And that's an impact on our health. And migration and displacement. If your area is flood prone, you would have to migrate, and the psychological impact it places on you is a social impact too. So yes, let's consider all these as um, part of this conflict that that arises if we should adapt, and then these changes affect us in that wise. So yeah, let me give an example. I googled for some examples in other African regions because I'm in Ghana. So the rest I either listen to the news or Google for it. So in the Sahel regions, um, Google is giving me that they're experiencing severe drought and desertification, and it's affecting millions. And in East Africa, like Kenya and Ethiopia, they're also facing a drought. As of 2019 to 2020, there was a locust outbreak. I think my colleague in Kenya can attest to that fact. In 2019, between 2019 to 2020, there was a locust outbreak, and that's an unusual weather pattern. And it dropped, the crop yield dropped drastically due to this locust outbreak. And in Southern Africa, like Mozambique, Zimbabwe, and Malawi, I've heard from Google that they've been hit by powerful cyclone. And there was this cyclone Idea. I don't know whether I'm mentioning the name right. Brothers from Mozambique and Zimbabwe can help me, and Malawi can help me. In 2019, cyclone Idea. It caused widespread destruction and displacement. It displaced properties, it displaced humans, it displaced settlements as well. And also in West Africa, we've mentioned, since my colleague from Nigeria is in West Africa, we've also mentioned examples of these adaptation and these mitigation efforts that the climate change has, how climate change has affected Africa as a whole. So these are the examples I'll give so far. Thank you. I hope my other panelists have something to add to it as well. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Engineer Abigail. That was very extensive. I think that if we have to do climate change lectures 101, this is the effect you have categorized into various aspects for us. Thank you for that effort you've made. Now I'm going to go to engineers Doreen and Dr. Elisa to tell us what are the major challenges we are facing in adapting to these changes. I mean, what are the major challenges that Madam Abigail, expounded on? What are the challenges in adapting to these changes? So whoever is ready, which do I go for first? Please take it out.
Okay, thank you. I think for a while I was just learning from Dr. Elisha and then Madam Abigail. I think I want to just add. Let me just add something.
Engineer,
Can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me? Hello, Mr. Moderator, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
We can hear you.
Okay.
So we can hear you.
Okay, thank you very much. So I was saying, I want to just add to what Dr. Elisha said when we were talking about the contribution of Africa to. I'll touch on just briefly before I go to answer the question. I think Africa, because if you come down to Nigeria, I feel for most of the oil-producing country, Nigeria is one, and Ghana is also actually close behind. We actually produce a lot of oil. The gas flaring, I know for Nigeria, they have they're looking at targeting 2030 to stop gas flaring. But imagine they've been flaring gas in Nigeria since 1950 something, when petroleum was actually found in Olobri, somewhere in Bayelsa State. So imagine how much that has contributed, the number of production, the millions of barrels that have been produced, and the gas that is being flared. So we actually also have our own part to play. Yes, the developed countries actually did much more before now, and then we are it's now we are doing, we're actually joining in contributing, because they have become developed. They've used a lot of their resources, and then nowadays they talk about energy efficiency, and they talk about trying to introduce people going into renewable energy, EV cars and all that. But they have actually led in the destruction of the world. So what Africa is doing, in not trying to argue with Doc, is that we are actually just joining in. But I feel what we are doing is not commensurate with what they actually have done. Like if you see the percentage of electricity that we generate from fossil fuel, I don't think Nigeria is generating up to what maybe New York, just New York, the generation and also electricity that they're actually being used there, Nigeria is not generating that amount. So they are still, yes, they've done, but they are still doing a lot. So, sometimes we argue about it and try to find out, it's because they don't want to pay. There was a time they were saying that they have to pay the developing countries for the destruction they've done to the climate. But it's a conversation that is still on. But I still feel that they've done much more than we will ever do, even at the continent. But we are still doing our own part. So coming to the challenges faced in adapting to climate change, I think there are just three major ones. I'll just touch on them and see how well I can go. The first one is finance. I think yesterday when we were doing the mock, Doc talked about climate proofing. And then one thing about climate proofing is trying to ensure that infrastructure developed will actually have resilience to climate change. So when you're constructing road, ensure that it has resilience to be able to, even when you have climate change issues coming up, the drought coming up, the overflowing of the seas and all that, it to be able to resist. But to develop most of those infrastructures, you need finance. With climate proofing, you might end up spending more than ×3 of what you would have spent if you didn't do climate proofing, trying to ensure that this would be able to withstand climate change and the climate change issues. So finance is actually key, and it's key. The second one is the knowledge gap that we have. The world has actually gone very far. I know in Haiti, in some other countries, we had earthquake, and you had a lot of climate-related devastation and disaster happening. But you find out some of those countries, the buildings, if you look at the buildings are resistant to climate change. So they build their buildings, and then no matter what happens, they still stand. But if you come to a country like Nigeria, when we have flood in some areas, it just destroy, and then people have nowhere to stay. So I think the knowledge gap, we need to buy into the knowledge they have there and find out how can we also do what they do. How can we do it in the best way? But even with the knowledge, we'll still need finance. And then the last one I feel is also the institutional constraints. We have a lot of institutions trying to do everything at the same time. So there should be one that is actually, for Nigeria, you have the NIMED, you have the NEMA, you have so many of them. So sometimes when you have emergencies, climate change issues, for people to adapt, you have to go through processes. And before you get to the point where you have to even help those that are actually affected by maybe flood and all that, a lot of things would have been destroyed. So institutional constraints, having to know what to do, when to do. I know there's a policy that has actually been developed, and I think a framework that is being worked on, that the Nigerian I think adaptive plan on climate change, a framework. But I think more needs to be done when it comes to institutional. They need to actually know what exactly needs to be done in the effects of a climate-related issue. So those are those three. I'll allow Doc to also contribute.
Yeah, sure. So thank you very much. Let us pick it up from Doc then.
Thank you very much. I think my colleagues have emphasized the three major issues that is to do with the finance, how we can finance our resilience planning, our infrastructure, especially as engineers. But I will tell you that in the design phase, especially those who are in the manufacturing space, we need to produce goods that are more cheaper to produce in terms of energy cost, and that their waste output is also less polluting. That way, even if we invest much on finance, but we know in the long run, we will be recovering the amount that we have used to adapt. Then on the issue of capacity, you see, this knowledge gap is also very expensive. Not all nations can afford to teach their populations on how to move to the new levels of life. The one thing that I wanted to emphasize without repeating what others have said is the question of adoption. So most people are dogmatic, and you can see Africa, we have these boundaries, which I can say here between Kenya and Ghana, we don't have a boundary. Moderator, when I was coming to Toka, I was received the way I'm received in Nairobi. They only needed to see my passport. I wish that can happen to all African nations. But in terms of the socio-cultural practices, we still believe in what we inherited from our grandparents. So if, for example, the uptake of certain adaptation system may not be universally accepted across our lands, such that the scaling aspect, even though the benefits may be very promising, but how do you convince the population to take it in mass? These are issues that require great research effort, and that is why our universities, I have always advocated that our universities should bring this issue of embedding the climate change pedagogy onto the programs, the curriculums. So when our graduates move out to the field, they are already having this aspect of climate change. Allow me to add, you know, most of our research projects at the university levels, and this is my belief, if they could be geared towards discussing these issues of climate change, either at the adaptation or mitigation level, then we will not be talking about how hard it is to adapt, because then the new expertise that is coming out is already so knowledgeable, and then now life moves on very fast. So I think we are on the right gear by sensitizing ourselves the way we are doing this evening here. And I believe in the next 4 or 5 years, the new engineers in Africa will be talking a different story from what we are talking now. Thank you, moderator.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lisa and Engineer Rain, picking up from where Engineer Abigail, left off. This is very educative. I'm interested. Our guests and everybody, gradually we are exhausting what we have to talk about today. So be patient with us. Now I'm going to say, that community involvement in all these things we've talked about is crucial. It's crucial due to the fact that people are in subsistence farming and depending on rainfall patterns here and there to carry out their activities, to take care of their families. Now, so it is important they are involved. But what strategies have proven effective in engaging local communities in all of your regions? So Engineer Abigail has been resting for some time now, so I'll go for her now, and then briefly I'll come to Engineer Rain, and then I'll come to Doc again. So please, Engineer Abigail, take it up.
Thank you very much. So fortunately for Ghana, at the just ended COP28, the United Arab Emirates contributed like $30 million US dollars towards sustainable agriculture, forest restoration, ecosystem services, and sustainable livelihood for local communities. And I mentioned this project in my earlier submission. It's called Resilient Ghana. If this project is implemented, it's going to go a long way to ensure that these local communities are rightly engaged. And then back to the question, I think if we involve the communities, then we would have proven to be effective in local community education and engaging in Ghana. And this includes education and awareness campaign. I think the mining industries are doing that a lot. Like they have dedicated a section. They've hired people in a team that educate and create climate change awareness. But because they are mining, they restrict it to more of educating them on deforestation, the impact of deforestation, and the effect of afforestation on the land that they are mining. Like they restrict it to their environment. But the government of Ghana can use this money that was donated by the United Arab Emirates government to educate and create awareness in all communities, informing them about the climate change impact and the strategies that they can go through to adapt. And we also need proper planning. Like, fortunately for Ghana, we have $30 million to plan, so we can involve these community members, these chiefs, and these clan heads, and so forth. If you involve them in decision making, they are right by the problem. They know what is happening in their community, so they'll be the best person to tell you, "Oh, I'm experiencing maybe an here, or somebody experienced an earthquake, a volcano erupted here, and this is a change that has never happened before." Then we will know what to plan and do. So we can prioritize the needs of each locality, and this will go a long way in helping climate change adaptation. Also, capacity building. We should provide training and resources to help these communities implement and adapt measures that would help them, especially sustainable farming practices and water conservation techniques. If you go to somewhere up north, they have a big irrigation to conserve water, but primarily it's actually drying up. But I think it's still a good technique. It's still a very good technique. So let's continue building capacity in our local communities. That's the focus. The focus is the local communities. The government should invest this money, plan, and then involve the local communities, and then provide training for the local communities. Even those who are not educated can benefit from this training, and it would go a long way to ensure that we adapt rightly. And also, community-led initiatives. We should support local projects that enhance resilience, such as tree planting. Recently, at my company, we embarked on tree planting. I think it was for all government companies, and I could see some of the trees sprouting up, and I think that's a very good initiative. So community garden, like, and rainwater harvesting systems. If you go to many communities in Ghana, they harvest rainwater, and these are systems implemented by the government for them to harness and harvest rainwater and use it later on. So all these initiatives can help prove in that we have effectively engaged our local communities. And in Ghana, for instance, we can use a $30 million rightfully and judiciously, and it would go a long way to impact our community and Ghana as a whole. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Engineer Rain.
Thank you, moderator. Sorry, I wish Engineer Abigail can give us part of the $30 million, because she actually keeps mentioning and mentioning and mentioning. I think it's much. Please give us some to also use in our.
Yes. We'll give Nigeria $1 million.
So thank you. I think Engineer Abigail actually said most of what is needed to be done, because you find out the communities, the rural communities, actually those are actually affected by climate change. Yes, the city centers, you have flooding, but aside flooding, I think it's basically that. But the real impact on farming, the real impact on increased diseases, the real impact on health issues and high temperature and all that actually really affects the community. So I think it's, as she said a lot, bringing the community in is key. And then when you bring the community in through education, through sensitization, through provision of grant, provision of things or tools that they need to actually be able to adapt. I saw some things. I think over here in Nigeria, there are organizations that are actually trying to also train communities in the production of biogas from waste, so they won't have to go for fell trees to produce for firewood and all that, which also will not lead to the deforestation. So I think education is key, sensitization is also key, and then giving them the required support, that is key. Trying to also see, I know in Nigeria we have an organization called REA, Rural Electrification Agency, which also goes about into communities, trying to give them solar panels that they can also use to power their houses. This helps them, because if you don't give them, it's either they settle for kerosene, they have this kerosene lantern, and that's actually increasing the fossil fuel being used. And you know the effect of that. We have people dying or inhaling most of those the fumes, all because of they need light in their houses. So I think Engineer Abigail has said a lot. Let me not just try to repeat what she said. But bringing the community in is key. and we need to carry out that as much as we can. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I think that, I mean, we all believe the local community participation is crucial. Dr. Ake, what do you say?
Thank you. I think my two colleagues have elaborated on the question of what is working in the adaptation space. I will add just the one element of the bit of finance. You know, mostly when we hear the question of adaptation, it comes with where do we get the money? Much of the time here in Africa, we look for donor funding, which have their conditions. And some of the conditions are very stringent. For example, you have heard about the Green Climate Fund. For you to even source that money, you need a professor by your side. And most of our people cannot afford that. And in our fiscal plans in our governments, rarely do we have enough to even plan for this adaptation issue. So that we need to train our young generation on the best way to adapt without waiting until they are mature is when we are teaching ourselves. I believe in the concept of doing it yourself, DIY. And this can happen by planting trees. For example, in our nation, our president is rallying us to plant 15 billion trees in his first term in office. And because we sometimes have heavy rainfall, it is a good thing, for example, to have a recharge system so that the rainwater does not flow very fast to the oceans and the seas or the lakes, but they are kept within our neighborhoods through the recharge systems. So in adaptation, I would say there are three angles to it. One is the short-term measures, and I will tell you, our local population would want things that give them money to the pocket, the wealth generation. So if in our local scenes here, I talked about the smart agriculture, so that we produce things that are sold in our local supermarkets and money comes back to the pocket of the farmers. And I can assure you that if we have new ways of doing things that help the local population to adapt and also make wealth, they will move very fast. I have seen here, we have pastoralists who are now being taught how to be agriculturalists in terms of farming their own foods. And in the scholarly space where I am, especially if we take the issue of transportation, we want to work with the planners in our cities so that we create neighborhoods which are self-reliant, so that we don't have our mobility to be energy intensive. And especially at personal level, I want to encourage all of us here that if we can plan our trips in a manner that we use less energy and less cost, then we are not only adapting, we are also mitigating. And the long-term effect of our actions will be felt by generations to come, because that is the essence of the topic of the day. How can the present generation transfer less risk to the future generation? Because, you know, all natural disasters, it has been said, is linked to issues of climate change, be it flooding, be it desert, be it the high winds, whatever you may call it. Rarely today do we have just natural accidents. I saw my colleague from Nigeria trying to remember when last we had a volcanic eruption. But we can count many times when we have had floods or when we have had droughts. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that. I think that we have exhausted a lot of the of the issues, and everything is falling in the basket. And if we should go back to the basket, I think that will have a lot of insight. So with the remaining set of questions, our time is fast spent. So we would like to touch on, if it requires that you just list a few things, that we can list it and then try to wrap up on this discussion and to see the way forward. So the next question is going to Engineer Doreen. What are the most critical actions that need to be taken immediately to enhance climate change adaptation in your country? I guess when you think about your country, you are speaking for all of us. Yeah, Engineer Doreen, please, do you copy?
Okay, what are the 3 areas that, okay, can you?
Hello, I'm not sure. Madam Abigail, can you hear me?
Yes, please, I can hear you. I think his network is interrupted. The network is poor at his end.
Can I go ahead?
Yeah, we are finding it difficult to get your feed.
Okay, okay. I think you can go to the next question. Difficult. Can you hear me now?
I guess that I move to the next person, and then I'll try and come back to you again, most definitely, so that you at least touch on that. Yeah, whilst you probably
okay, thank you.
Yeah, whilst you probably try to sort it out and check on your network, let me go to Dr. Elisa and ask him, Doc, how do you see the future of climate change adaptation in your country over the next, say, decade? If we give ourselves a decade, how do you see changes in that? What will be the main priorities that, say, your country focus?
Thank you very much. Here in Kenya, our government in the national adaptation plans, we are moving communities, we are preparing them to know and to be aware about the climate change. Today, everybody is talking about this issue, and there are many activities I can see whose long-term benefits, as you say, in decades to come will bear fruit. One of which in the transportation, we are rolling out mass transit systems in our cities. We are rolling out electric mobilities in our cities. We are actually teaching our younger generation how to conserve resources like water, electricity, so that people become conscious, the energy saving systems, the smart taps that you don't need to say open the tap. It only opens when you really need it. And this is where technology is helping us as a nation. Our curriculum from lower primary is being improved to onboard the issues of artificial intelligence and machine learning. Because this will give great impetus to making sure we are all aligned to the digital space and move in the adaptations that are expected. Because climate change is here with us, even though the global community is ambitiously trying to contain it by 2030 so that the temperature rise will not be beyond 1.5 degrees. But we have witnessed every time there is a COP, there are always disagreements. So we are not very sure, for example, on this part of the world, what are the green strategies that we have? And I call on Africa. I wish we had the African Union here, that we must force these green strategies to be embedded in our national plans, that they are measured in quantum and they are tracked. rather than becoming a talk show agenda. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Elisa. Yes, indeed, we've got smart brains, leading our discussions today. I'm going to go to Engineer Abigail, and I'm going to say that your country, for example, Ghana has aside about some 30 million USD, if I got you right, to help solve some of these issues and so on and so forth. What gives you hope about the future of climate adaptation in your country? To you, Madam Abigail. And then in addition to that, briefly, what would be your advice you would want to give to young people who would want to get involved in climate change and related areas? So it's a 2-in-1.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, I think there is hope for Ghana. There is hope for Africa. Ghana, for instance, we've lined the EV electric vehicle framework and policy and the national climate action. Like a lot has been lined to, adapt and some to mitigate. And I think it's a very good approach. There is hope. And if you come to the energy sector, there are a lot of should I say solar, renewable energy in the mix. A lot of solar coming into the mix, a lot of wind, and now nuclear. They just launched the nuclear energy bid, and then Ghana will be embarking on nuclear power plant, building nuclear power plant very soon with the help of foreign aids for a time. Then Ghana will take over, and I think this is hopeful, and it's hopeful for Ghana, and for the youth, the young ones. And the advice I'll give: first of all, educate yourself is very important. Self-learning is very, very important, and get involved locally. You participate in local environmental initiative. If there is anything to volunteer for, you should be there, raise your hand, volunteer, and then get involved. And you should develop relevant skills, like educate yourself, whatever skills that you need, and you need to focus on that would help, such as renewable energy. Now there's environmental engineering. One of our panelists has an MSc in environmental engineering. Sustainable agriculture, policy advocacy, like a lot to learn from. Let's develop our skills and also advocate for change. Whenever there is a voice out there that there should be an advocate for change, raise your voice, add your voice to it, and raise awareness and advocate for change, for stronger climate policies and actions that are within our community and even beyond. And let's stay informed, and then more importantly, network. I think these are my take for today. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Do we have Engineer Doreen back? Would like to hear your voice. I hope your network is stable now.
Yeah, it is. So I think what's been said, we just need, as young engineers, we need to do more. Let's make use of the recent technologies that we have. I know you're trying to do a lot. I was trying to agriculture, forest, and energy, transportation, and waste management. For energy, I know Nigeria, some of the things are actually forced on us because the removal of fuel subsidy in Nigeria has reduced people's movement. So those that had a lot of cars before, they were driving cars anywhere, anyhow they want to drive it, they've cut down on that. The removal of subsidy on electricity has reduced usage of electricity too, which is actually one of the ways we could also adapt and also do a way to also mitigate the need to generate more electricity. So people have reduced. Before now, people can just put on their ACs from morning to evening, but if you try that, you might spend your salary in a day. So a lot of things are actually being done, although most of them are actually taxes, but education is there, and so many other things are done. I think a lot have been said by Engineer Abigail. Actually, most of the things are actually being done in Nigeria. Renewable energy is being promoted. Government is giving. They are removing taxes on renewable energy. They are encouraging people to bring in renewable energy. You have organizations that are actually trying to. We have NASENI, which is also trying to develop like solar panels here in Nigeria. So we have to also be importing them. And aside that, waste disposal, because one of the things that also contributes to climate change is also waste. the way we manage waste is also being enhanced in Nigeria. A lot is being done in Lagos and then in Abuja, which is where I am. A lot of organizations are actually interested in how waste has been contained. So you won't have a lot of waste being dumped on the site, and then you have methane being released to the atmosphere, carbon being released to the atmosphere, which also contribute to climate change. It might be little, but all that, if you add little, it will lead to a lot. So a lot being done to also help. And I encourage engineers, let's do more in trying to build climate change resilient projects. Let's do more in the areas of learning. The world is a global village, so we could tap from the knowledge that they have up there in Europe and also bring it into Africa, to Nigeria and all the countries around, and see what we can do to help our nation so that we will not be subsumed or thrown away by the effects of climate change. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, my panelists and our listeners, participators. Please, I'm going to ask my last question to everyone. So when it is your turn to give us a brief response about this kind of question, then you also use the opportunity to give us your last few words, emphasizing that few words. And so our last question to all of you is, let me admit ahead of time that Dr. Elisha, this particular question I'm going to ask, he has thrown a bit of light on it already, but his response is what I will take first. Probably he would reiterate, what he said and probably add on if there need be, and then he will give us his last response, and then Madam Abigail will come, and then Engineer Doreen will also come. So how do engineers contribute to climate mitigation and adaptation through infrastructure design, ensuring resilience, and conducting economic appraisals? So to all of you, I would want Engineer Dr. Ake to start.
Thank you very much. A very interesting question, very broad. Our role as engineers in contributing to the issues of mitigation, adaptation, and what I would call climate proofing appraisals. Engineers, by their nature of work, is that we solve community problems or societal problems which are assessed, documented using science, and we apply mathematics and engineering principles to have sustainable solutions. I think climate change is an aspect that even though we are thinking is a latecomer, it has been there with us on the question of sustainability. And most of the time it has been discussed under the safety and risks. So what I would say, when we want to mitigate, we make sure we produce with less energy, and we also avoid the contribution to the triple crisis of our time, that is environmental pollution, the loss of biodiversity, and the global warming. So if whatever we do on our desk every day can contribute to less global warming, then we shall also be contributing to less pollution into our environment, and we will not kill further the species, because then life will not be bearable on Earth. In terms of adaptation, this is where resilience building and climate proofing comes into play. In fact, earlier I had thought that we'll discuss especially the issue of appraisal. But because of the constraint of time, allow me just to put some little light on this question that while we are doing more to produce resilient infrastructure that can receive shocks and still function, we need to ask the question in this manner: who bears the cost? What discount rates do we use? so that when we are doing appraisal in terms of the cost and the benefits, we need to have a balance of the two, and then the transfer into the future becomes less costly to the future generation. Otherwise, our great-grandchildren will blame us. This debate has come at the right time to prepare African engineer to design a properly functioning, sustainable infrastructure that is adaptive to the climate shocks. And if our designs can help us in mitigation, it will go far much better in giving us more benefits into the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Engineer Ake. We are blessed to have you today. May Engineer Abigail take it from here.
Okay, so I'll tackle how engineers contribute to climate mitigation and adaptation, ensuring resilience, and I'll focus on green infrastructure. So we can mitigate by developing green infrastructure like green roofs. I don't know whether it's possible in the cities, but most of the villages, they have these green roofs made of hay, yeah, and urban forest and permeable pavement. And this is more of the civil or the infrastructure aspect, but it can ensure resilience and enhance carbon sequestration. And also in our transport system, we can design efficient public transport system. I think in Ghana, something like I came up, BRT, but it was wrapped off at some point. And also, let's promote electric vehicles. Even though the policies that electric vehicles, import duty on electric vehicles are free, it's not really working at the port. But I think gradually, Ghana government will get to implement this policy, and then it can help us all so that we can have electric vehicles in Ghana, and a lot of electric vehicles in Ghana to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And for the adaptation, we can adapt by incorporating climate projections into urban planning. So our urban planners here would have to incorporate climate projections to ensure that communities are built in safer areas. So areas that are away from flood zones and other high risk areas like volcanic areas, earthquake prone areas, and so forth. And disaster resilient design can also be created. We can incorporate that in building infrastructure designs, and so how these buildings can quickly recover from disasters. This is happening in Japan and Korea, so we can also do same for Africa in earthquake prone zones, how they can quickly recover from disaster like earthquake, flood, and all that, and it minimize our downtime and economic losses. So yeah, these are my take, and my final is it's possible. Climate adaptation mitigation is possible. It's a clarion call to all of us, especially we the youth. We are the future. So if we understand and we implement whatever we are learning here, I think in the future we are going to have a very bright future, a very bright Africa, a very happy Africa as well. So let's all get involved. It's a clarion call to all of us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Engineer Abigail Echampo-Mapoku. Can I have the response from Engineer Doreen Joseph and then his final remarks?
Okay, so I'm the last person, so I'll try, and there's something they call evening program. I'll try and make it short. But the area I want us to also focus on, when it comes to mitigation, is the new concept. It's not really new, but the concept of circular economy, and that actually looks at trying to ensure that resources stay longer in use. So you don't have to go back to get more raw materials to produce results. So circular economy, ensuring the place of recycling, ensure we do a lot of recycling. There are a lot of things we just dump, a lot of things we just discard that is just first use, and people can continue to use them. So I encourage people, we can just go through, I won't want to elaborate on that, but we'll just go through the process of circular economy. Let's see how long we can ensure that materials stay in use. The place of energy efficiency building, Engineer Abidal talked about roof, but energy efficient building is also an area we also need to focus on. When we are building homes, we build homes to use less power. So you look at the directions, especially for engineers that do a lot of design, look at the direction of the wind, look at the direction of the sunshine. There are people that build homes. I'm very sure you also see it in Ghana. They build homes and there are areas of your house where you have to put on your lights as in 24 hours, if not it will be dark. So all those things are things you should look at. In Nigeria, there's this concept of using bamboo instead of using a rod, iron rod in building. So let's think green, think renewable, think things that we know we can always have in the environment. Let's try using more of green things. And then in adaptation, I think we need to know that if we don't take care of ourselves, if we don't do the right thing, we might be consumed. I've said it and I've said it again, might be consumed. Imagine what is happening now. If the young ones, the young engineers, if we don't put in things that would help, I don't know how the rainstorm will be in the next 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 years. If we have very heavy rainstorm that is destroying homes, destroying farms, and then the cost of food is going this high, we need to think outside the box and design ways that we can really adapt to climate change. So the ball lies in our courts. We can't depend on the Western nations. They've gone ahead of us and they know how to adapt to climate change. So the ball's in our courts. It's not just in the saying, let's go back and let's see what exactly we can do. In our own little way, let's do what we can do to help our nation and also to help our continent. So thank you. And thank you again for the opportunity to air my little view and my knowledge to add it to, and also to meeting all the wonderful people that I've met on the panel. Thank you, and thank you again.
Yeah, thank you very much to each one of you. I think that gradually we have been able to draw the curtains on the panel discussion. In the summary, or the take home, if you like, is that climate change is one of the most significant problems facing the world. And global warming is increasing day by day. We have, said that time and over again. Rainfall patterns have changed. If we cannot prevent it as soon as possible, our world will face some undesirable consequences. Recently, there was some serious flooding in Dubai. So climate change is happening now. That's all that we've been saying today. And it's largely due to human activities, and it's amenable to action to slow its pace and reduce its impact. Climate change is a global phenomenon, but it is people and communities at the local level that experience the consequences. When we have opportunities, and there are various schools of thought saying that Africa is not contributing, so we shouldn't talk about it, we should talk about it, because engineers, Abigail, Doreen, Dr. Aka have reiterated the importance attached to looking at this holistically. We should incorporate into our designs when we are designing, even our curriculum and so on and so forth. We should engage our local communities. We should talk about it now than ever. We should involve stakeholders. I remember Madam Abigail talking about the fact that we should engage community leaders, chiefs, and all that, so that we all participate. Thank you very much, my panelists, smart panelists, and then thank you very much, audience, for participating in today's panel discussion. God bless you, and hope to meet you sometime again on a similar event. Please, Madam MC, you may take it over now.
Thank you very much, Dr. Patrick Boache. That was a very insightful presentation. I mean, I was hooked in from beginning to end. It was very, very insightful and impactful. So we now have room for just 3 questions. We've spent a lot of time, and so, but it was all for a good cause. So we have room for just 3 questions. So kindly indicate by raising of hands if you have a question. I see that Engineer Doreen Kirima is her hand is up. So Engineer Doreen, kindly proceed with your question.
Thank you so much. Mine is actually not a question, it's an announcement. I have shared a link in the chat. We are calling for volunteers. Kindly, members, if you're interested to volunteer in our activities, fill in the Google form that I have shared in the chat. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Engineer Doreen. Please, anyone with questions? We have room for just 2 questions because we are behind time. So if you have any questions, kindly raise your hand. I'm going through the charts, and then I see that Joel Singh asked a question. Joel, if you're on the line, can you share your question with us again? And after that, Samuel Jan would give us the next question for our panelists, and then we will proceed from there to close the meeting. Thank you.
Edith, thank you. But I think now everything was really clear, and the conclusion was attend what I asked. It's
All right.
now answering the questions. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. Samuel Jan, kindly proceed with your question. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I'm Engineer Jan Samuel. My first question has to do with what my colleague engineer was talking about. That's $30 million for reforestation. How do we go about it? Like the big cities in Ghana. I'm speaking with you from Takrady, that of Accra. How do we reforest these cities? Because the villages, I know the trees are available at that place. So that project, how are we going about it? Then my second question has to do with how do we distinguish between climate change and human activities like putting rubbish and those stuffs in the drains, and human activities like building in the how do you call it, rain areas to cause storms and those stuffs. So in that sense, how do you distinguish between the two? That's my question.
Okay, if I got it right, your first question was on how cities can benefit from the Resilient Ghana, the fund the UAE government gave to Ghana. Is that the question?
Yes, please.
Yeah. So I think in my submissions earlier I spoke about gardening, like so. The government can also ensure that in cities, like if I have a community like Tema, you see that every house has a small garden. I think it's done purposely to, help with this climate changes activities. And if we're able to do that in all the cities, like if you go to Kaswa, every is well demarcated, is well built. Every house has a garden or something like that, or a tree built in the house. I think it will go a long way to help. But this tree planting exercise was not restricted to only the villages. It was even mostly done in the cities. So yes, I think the cities are also benefiting from it, and the government is investing in this tree planting, community gardening, and rainwater storage system. If you go through the cities, most of the houses have rainwater storage system. It's not sponsored by the government though, but it's encouraged. It's encouraged by these community town planners to, have a rainwater storage system in your house when you are building. So I think all these play a major role. And your your second question, I don't know, you said human activities. How human activities? Can you come again with that? I think it was a very lengthy one. I couldn't grasp a lot.
Yes, Engineer Abigail, I think that I'm supposed to be
Oh, okay. So
guiding these questions. I'm glad we have a few. So the next question was, how would you categorize people building in waterways? You know, some places in communities are supposed to be buffer zones, where some rain running waters would collect for some time, and then they will sieve slowly. But nowadays, people are building in waterways and all that. So how would you, reconcile that to climate change? I guess that was the question, right?
yes, I think I remember that was it. So yes, like I mentioned, climate change adaptation and mitigation is a clarion call to all of us. So if you are going to buy a land, you should note whether your land is in a buffer zone or not. If your land is closer to the road or any transmission area or a road, there is a buffer zone. It shouldn't be within the buffer zone. Some people even build and then build their walls on the buffer zones of electricity ways, of drainage ways, of what river bodies ways. And I think this is not a good attitude as Africans. We should make sure that we do our due diligence whenever we are buying land. Lands that are planned by communities, the community in urban centers, like in Tema, we have the TMA, yeah. Tema is well planned because the TMA is managing things very, very well. The road network on point, drainage on point. So you hardly hear of flooding in Tema. So if we have these community and urban planning centers in all the communities, I think it will go a long way to help us. And individuals, when you are buying a land, please make sure you don't buy a land that is in a buffer zone. If somebody sell land, you go and do due diligence. And if you do all your survey and then you realize that no, this land is close to maybe this river body or that, and then I'm not supposed to build there, you don't build there. But this attitude of humans have led to people building in flood prone areas, and then when it floods they'll be asking the government for compensation and whatsoever. So let's change our attitude first, then we can talk later. Thank you.
Thank you
Oh,
very much, Engineer Abigail. Yeah,
Can
I
I just
think that
can I just add? Sorry, let me just add. Sorry, moderator. Let me just add to what Engineer Abigail said. If you can Google trade more, I don't know if you could hear me. Just Google trade more estate in Abuja. Those estates are actually, people have actually had houses there for years, but in the past 2-3 years, ideally, well, of recent, we found out that those houses were actually built on floodplains, but they've been living there for years. But the increased rainfall, which we all have contributed to, we now know is as the result of climate change, has increased the flood area in those, the flooding in those areas. So in the past 2 years, you've had houses being almost submerged under the water. So yes, they built the houses there. But before now, they were living there. Some have stayed there for like 10, 15, 10, between say 10 to 12 years, and nothing had happened. But increased rainfall has led to increased flooding. So yes, they had issues, but climate change has also resulted in them suffering that destruction that they wouldn't have suffered if not for the increased rainfall as a result of climate change. Let me just add that to what Engineer Abigail said. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think that it would suffice where we needed examples from various countries. So if you have that, fantastic. I think I see another person, Samuel Jan, who would want to ask a question. Before I let him in, probably he's the last person we are going to take for the day. The rest of you, if you still do have questions, you can contact us privately. I think one way that the people in the urban areas are also contributing is through the use of refrigerators and other systems, ACs. I think Engineer Doreen talked about it some way, somehow. There is this chemical compound categorized as hydrofluorocarbons, which do not damage the ozone layer per se, but still contribute to greenhouse effect. So if you are purchasing the equipment and items, make sure that they are those that are built with resilience and sustainable effects so that you don't contribute to destroying our environment. Now I take Samuel Jan, please, what is your question?
Hello, Doc. I just asked my question.
Okay, then I'll go to Mr. Henry. Mr. Henry, please, can we have your question? Hello, Mr. Henry. Okay, so
hello.
Yeah.
Hello. Am I loud and clear?
Please, we can hear you.
Oh, thank you very much. Actually, mine is not a question, but I wanted to appreciate you people, especially our guest speakers, the moderator, all the people. That's very nice information. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. So I guess now I can hand over properly to Madam Deborah Sechi. Please, over to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kwache. We really appreciate you taking, steering the, the wheel for our panel discussion for this afternoon. As I said earlier, this was very insightful. We've learned a lot, and it is great because we've listened to people, young people like us, who have a lot of insights and have a lot of knowledge on the subject. And so it's to encourage us to be able to proceed and do better in our communities. So I'll call on Engineer Benedict to give us some announcements, and then we will proceed to close. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you very much, Deborah. All right, so I think there's a link in the chat box for my chairperson. So if you want to volunteer, kindly access the link and then put your details so we can contact you. Also to the rest of the team, especially the Ghanaians, please do well if you haven't made some entries into the link that we shared for the job survey. Kindly put in your details so we can have enough data to be able to analyze. Please look forward to our event for July. Thank you very much for joining. Bye.
Thank you very much, Engineer Benedict. So I'll kindly re-emphasize that a link has been put in the group by Engineer Dorin Kirima. It is the Young Engineers Committee is calling for volunteers to assist in the implementation of various proposed committee activities. So if you're interested to volunteer, please express your interest by filling the Google form that she put in the chat. Kindly, let's all try and volunteer. And as Engineer Benedict said, we have a lot more activities, and we have some activities slated for July as well. So let's be on the lookout for that as well. Thank you so much for joining this meeting.